2.3 Congressional Behavior. So, intensifying partisanship causes a gridlock. This is basically people identifying more and more with like this one opinion or party and like being like against the other one. And a gridlock happens because there's this congestion of opposing forces which stops like the process of moving forward. So if the president's party is different than the Congress's party, then the president's not going to want to sign a lot of the bills that Congress puts out. Or if the House party versus the Senate's like majority party is different, then they're going to disagree on a lot of things, and things will pass in the House but not in the Senate, or it'll pass in the Senate and not in the House. And you know, people have opinions and they're going to stand by them. And the more intense these opinions get, the harder it is to like change and adapt to come to solutions. So it's harder to make this legislature. And the legislature has developed into like a partisan and sometimes uncivil institution. Liberals versus conservatives, that like fight has become much more intense. And party line voting has become more and more common. Party line voting is like voting with your party no matter what. Like you see two options, you go, oh, that's my party, so I'll vote no matter what. Now there are some different models of voting. I mentioned this in my last video. So first we have the delegate model, which is basically the people's vote. Like I, as a member of Congress, I represent you guys, so whatever you guys are thinking, I will vote. Like that's the way I'll vote. Then there's the trustee model, which is like my vote. So you guys chose me to represent you. You guys chose me to like do a good job here, so I'm going to trust myself to make this vote based on my opinions because like I'm the one you chose. And then there is like the political model, which is a mix of like what are your guys' opinions because you guys chose me as like to represent you, but also you guys chose me to represent you. So like it combines those two. And then redistricting has increased partisanship as well. And that is reshaping like the districts in Congress based on population. So like as population changes, like it changes geographically or whatever. So like this had a few people, but now it has a lot of people. So we have to like shift it around so they get their delegate or whatever. Now we have the must-know Supreme Court case Baker v. Carr. So can the Supreme Court judge a legislative district's constitutionality? Yes. Here we got like the one person, one vote principle. And it was basically about how we need population-based district lines. Because this dude Baker, he was like, oh, wait, with the way that the districts are set up, the rural people living in rural areas got more vote strength than those living in more urbanized areas. Like if there are 5 people living here and they get 1 vote up in Congress, like those 5 people's votes for like who they're putting up there matters more than like my 1 in 100 people area vote for 1 person in Congress. Like that's how we got to the 1 person, 1 vote and like redistricting, and Supreme Court can rule on this. So instead of 1 person and those 5 people basically accounting towards 20% of the vote, they would redistrict it, so it's not 1 person over here is 20% of the vote for that district versus 1 person here is like 1% of the vote for the district. No, they'll like draw the lines to make it nice and clean, so you get like 1 in 55 vote of a district. Basically, it has to do with redistricting and how 1 person should have 1 vote. Now, there's also this thing called gerrymandering. And this is drawing district lines to give advantage to one party. And they do this so they have like safe seats. These are districts in which like one party wins more than like 55% of the time in that district. And this is different than marginal seats or swing districts where it's like, who's gonna win? We don't know, like it's very unpredictable. And when we have more and more safe seats, we get more and more intense primaries because you already know that like this party is gonna win, right? So who is gonna be like the person representing that party? Like say it was a Democratic district, safe seat for Democrats. The 2 Democrats trying to be the one like running for that position because you know you want to be like endorsed by the party or whatever. It's going to be more intense among those 2 Democrats running because right, you're not worried about like this Republican candidate. No, you're worried about actually getting the chance to be the Democratic candidate. Getting primaried has become a term for how like a challenger will go directly against the incumbent, saying they're too moderate, and it pushes people to be more extreme in these primaries. Now, racial gerrymandering, earlier we were talking about partisan gerrymandering, so like with the parties. And now we're talking about racial gerrymandering, which is certain races getting diluted or made more pronounced in districts. And the must-know Supreme Court case for this is Shaw v. Reno. The question was, does creating a majority black population congressional district violate the 14th Amendment? Yes. So there was this really weird looking district, and it was like all weird and all over the place because it was made so that it was a majority black population in the district to try and like give that racial minority a voice. So this dude Shaw, he was like, that's not right though, because it's just based on race. Like, the only thing that you're considering when you're making these districts is race. And Reno, their opinion was that it was made to help a minority group. And so the court ended up deciding that, yeah, no, you can't make this just based on race, but they did say that race should be considered if you're going to be fair during district making. So race cannot be the only deciding factor when drawing these districts. Moving on to divided government and Senate showdowns. So the government can be considered divided when, say, the party of the president is different than the party of the House/Senate. And this fuels that partisan gridlock that we were talking about in the very beginning. And then this intensifies the fight over like which party gets to put more seats on the Supreme Court, because that's like a deciding factor in a lot of things then. A lame duck president, they cannot run again. They've like up to their 2 terms or whatever, and it's getting to the end of their term. We see this when Obama was coming to the end of his 2nd term. Obama was at the end of his 2nd term, and he was trying to nominate this judge because, you know, that's what a president does. But the Senate was of a different party, the Republican Party, and they were like, we're not going to consider this right now, we're just going to wait a little bit, because President Trump, who was coming in after Obama, he was Republican. So the Republican-held Senate wanted a Republican president to choose someone to be preferably a Republican justice then. So that really shows how parties are trying to like keep hold of the government and shows that partisan divide. And then Congress's public image to the public, they low-key look cold and uncaring. But on the other hand, the individual Congress people are kind of like well-liked. Thank you for watching. I hope this helped. Like, subscribe. Go find me on YouTube if you're watching this on TikTok, please.